So when we think about dystopian stories, usually it's, these really grim futures like total control, maybe the world's wrecked, stuff that leaves you feeling kind of hopeless.
Right, the classic bleak picture, no way out.
Exactly. But there's this other idea. It's called critical dystopia. It came about late 80s, 90s, and it's different.
How so? Different how?
Well, it's still pessimistic, still shows a pretty bad situation, but it hangs on to this idea, this commitment, really, that things can change. It offers what some academics call horizons of change.
Ah, okay, so it's not just doom and gloom. There's a crack of light somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much. Tom Moylan called it both a continuation of the old style and something new. It keeps that sort of utopian spark alive even in the darkness.
That's interesting. So it acknowledges the bad stuff, but doesn't completely give up hope.
Precisely. And that's what we're diving into today, using a really famous example, David Fincher's Fight Club from 1999.
Ah, Fight Club.
Yeah.
Definitely a film that made waves, visually stunning, and yeah, academics love talking about it.
They really do. And on the surface, it's pretty dark, violent, unsettling.
For sure. It makes you wonder, how does that fit with this idea of hope? A critical dystopia.
That's exactly the question we want to tackle. How does this seemingly bleak film actually function as a critical dystopia? What hope does it offer, if any?
And what might that lens tell us about, our own world?
Right. So we're drawing on some scholarly analysis here, folks who've really looked at Fight Club through this specific critical dystopia framework.
Okay, so let's nail down this critical dystopia thing a bit more. What are the defining features?
Well, Lyman Tower Sargent has a useful definition. He talks about it being a non-existent society, usually recognizable, that the creator wants us to see as worse than our own.
Okay, standard dystopia so far.
But here's the key part. It includes at least one utopian enclave, like a little pocket of something better, or it holds out hope that the dystopia can be overcome.
Gotcha. So that spark you mentioned, it has to be there in the text somehow.
Exactly. And Moylan and Raffaele Boccolini, they stress the importance of an open ending.
Open ending, meaning it doesn't all get tied up neatly.
Right. It leaves room for you, the viewer or reader, to imagine how things might get better. It suggests that even these really oppressive systems, they can be changed.
And maybe not by some big hero.
That's a big part of it. Often the idea is that change can come from people who seem pretty powerless, ordinary folks, not the ones usually in charge.
That feels relevant. Like, it gives a sense of agency back.
It really does. It often connects to critiques of, say, contemporary capitalism, showing fictionalized versions of problems we might recognize.
Which leads us straight back to Fight Club. Because pretty much everyone agrees it's a major critique of consumer society.
Oh, absolutely. Academics like Dicken and Lawston see it portraying capitalism as this force that's everywhere, never ending. And the anxiety it creates, it comes from having too much fake freedom.
Fake freedom. Like
Thank you.
the freedom to choose between 50 brands of soap.
Exactly. The freedom to consume. It's overwhelming, but ultimately empty. Omar Lizardo calls it a clear critique of a consumer society.
And others, like Linta, point to late capitalism's obsessive push for profits and excessive consumerism. It's seen as central.
Yeah. Philip Wegner also notes how its critique of corporate culture really aligns with Moylan's ideas about critical dystopias.
Now, I know some people see it differently. There's that argument from Henry Giroux about it promoting a kind of toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a reading out there. Giroux talks about authoritarian masculinity. But for this deep dive, we're focusing on the analysis that sees the critique of consumer culture as the main driver, with the violence sort of reacting against that culture's negativity.
Okay, so the violence is maybe a symptom, not the core message itself in this view.
That's the interpretation we're exploring. So let's dig into those dystopian elements related to consumerism. How does the film show it as negative?
Well, it presents this world where everyone's told, constantly, that buying stuff equals happiness. You get these promises, these lifestyle ideals.
That just don't match up with reality.
Exactly. And instead of being unique individuals, people become kind of interchangeable. Like that shapeless gray mass idea. You end up frustrated because the promises were hollow.
Tyler's whole rant about being raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars.
But we won't. And we're slowly learning that fact.
Yeah.
And we're very, very pissed off.
Yeah. That disillusionment is palpable.
And it's tied to losing individuality, isn't it? The whole copy of a copy of a copy thing.
Definitely. All the mentions of Starbucks, IKEA, these global brands that make everywhere feel the same, your identity gets flattened out.
It suggests consumerism isn't freedom, it's actually a new kind of discipline. You have to conform, buy the right things to fit in.
Yeah, Lizardo talks about predictability, duplicability, and redundancy. Instead of genuine self-expression, it becomes another form of control. And this seems to hit masculinity particularly hard in the film's portrayal.
Right. Lizardo argues there's this crisis of traditional manhood. Guys who might have done physical labor are now stuck in offices feeling, well, emasculated, maybe.
Yeah, that shift from the sort of 1950s working class ideal to the new man of the 90s, more sensitive, less defined by physical work.
Lynn Taney even talks about men shifting from being producers to being womanish targets of consumption. Like their role has fundamentally changed in a way that feels alienating.
And that feeling of being trapped in corporate life, the cubicle cells, it's presented as deeply soul-crushing.
Totally. Wegner mentions the alienation. It leads to depression, isolation, all classic dystopian themes, really.
Which brings us right to the narrator, Jack, as the script calls him. He's positioned as the ultimate everyman of this service economy.
Yeah, he's not really a distinct character in some ways, more like a stand-in for this whole generation of men. Maybe Lizardo and Wegner both point this out.
The fact he's unnamed, or just Jack, this generic name, really underlines that he's representative.
And think about his inner monologue. I am Jack's raging bile duct. I am Jack's complete lack of surprise. It's like he's fragmented, just a collection of symptoms.
And completely drowning in consumerism at the start. His condo is pure IKEA.
His biggest question is, what kind of dining set defines me as a person?
Yeah.
It perfectly captures that misplaced search for identity through objects.
And the film links this to a lack of real connection, doesn't it? Like shopping replacing intimacy.
Yeah, the line about reading pornography versus the Horseshack collection, the furniture catalog, tantalizes that IKEA catalog scene, how he flips through it like porn. It suggests consumerism has sort of co-opted desire itself.
It's unsettling. Male desire reduced to furniture, something static, domestic.
And again, that copy of a copy idea keeps popping up. The Xerox machine scene, the identical cubicles, the Starbucks cups everywhere.
It just hammers home that loss of individuality.
And none of it makes him happy. That's the crucial part. He's got insomnia, depression, eventually schizophrenia. He's bored, apathetic.
His line after the explosion, a house full of condiments and no food. It's such a perfect metaphor. All surface, no substance.
Exactly. And his job keeps him constantly moving, right?
Yeah.
Traveling all the time.
Yeah, adding to that feeling of being nowhere. Waking up in anonymous hotel rooms, different cities, completely disconnected.
No roots, no real relationships. Even his family background seems unstable, with Tyler's story about his father setting up different families like franchises.
It paints this picture of profound male angst and helplessness within this modern setup.
But then, Tyler Durden appears. And this is where that critical element starts to kick in.
Right. Tyler is everything the narrator isn't. He's free, charismatic, physical, rebellious, a complete opposite.
He's the catalyst, isn't he? The one who wakes Jack up. Graven calls it a salutary rescue mission from his boring life.
He becomes this kind of anti-consumerist guru. In Tyler we trust. It's almost religious.
He challenges Jack's whole value system. That key scene where Jack's lamenting his lost stuff.
There's a duvet cover.
And Tyler just rips into him. Is that what a man is? He forces him to see how absurd it is to define yourself by furniture. We are consumers. We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession.
That's a turning point. And after the apartment's gone, Jack moves into that derelict house with Tyler.
And he finds he doesn't actually miss his stuff. Not even the TV. Shedding the material possessions is the start of his liberation, I guess.
He starts acting out, getting bruised, showing up messy at work. The Fight Club emerges from this.
Yeah, the fighting. Is presented as a way to feel something real. Physical pain as an antidote to the numbness of consumer life.
How much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? Tyler asks. The scars become badges of honor, proof of existence.
They're unique, unlike mass-produced goods. It's about reclaiming the physical self, escaping those plastic lives Wegner talks about.
And the rules are simple, basic, a rejection of complex corporate life.
It becomes this underground community, men from all backgrounds finding this outlet. Celebrating physicality, rejecting enforced niceness.
But it doesn't stay there, does it? It morphs into something darker. Project Mayhem.
Right. And this is where the critique gets complex. What starts as rebellion becomes, as Dick and Lawson say, almost a Nazi-type organization. Blind obedience.
Taine notes the danger here, individuals taking extreme destructive action out of personal frustration. It escalates way beyond just fighting.
Their goal becomes widespread sabotage, targeting credit card companies, the symbols of the debt system that fuels consumerism.
Jack himself gets horrified by where it's going, realizing Tyler isn't real and trying to stop it.
But the plan goes ahead.
Yeah.
And paradoxically, even that mass destruction, it can be read as a violent, maybe necessary step towards breaking free from the system.
Which leads us to that very ambiguous, very debated final scene.
Jack and Marla, holding hands, watching the buildings collapse.
Yeah. Despite the chaos, analysts see a definite utopian impulse here. Wagner calls it a direct statement of a utopian vision, surprisingly.
Palahniuk himself, the author, talked about destruction making way for evolution, clearing the slate.
So the collapsing towers aren't just nihilism. They symbolize liberation from that consumerist skyline, opening up a new possibility.
A limitless horizon, as one scholar puts it. And Tass sees Jack uniting with Marla as a step back towards connection, rejecting the corporate world together.
So the film pushes through the darkness. It overcomes the pessimism, ending not with despair, but with this glimmer of a potential future, with relationship, with possibility.
Absolutely. It fits the critical dystopia model.
Yeah.
Sharp critique, deep pessimism, but ultimately an opening towards hope.
So wrapping up, Fight Club, despite its violence and darkness, really functions as a critical dystopia. It critiques consumerism, explores that crisis of identity and masculinity,
Traces that journey from disillusionment through rebellion.
and lands on an ending that, while ambiguous, offers that crucial horizon of change, that possibility of something better.
Which leaves us with a thought, maybe. Thinking about the film's message. What are the credit card companies in our own lives today?
Like, what symbols of consumerism or societal pressure might we need to, metaphorically, or maybe not so metaphorically, challenge or abandon?
Yeah, to find something more authentic. And is that final scene truly hopeful, or is it maybe a more cynical take on revolution itself? Does tearing things down actually lead to something better?
Lots to chew on there. We definitely encourage everyone to explore these themes, further critical dystopia, Fight Club's message, and maybe, reflect on our own relationship with consumer culture.